Today we're welcoming Jason Miller, a man who needs no introduction in the occult community, to the Practical Occult Podcast, a an interview series where we are talking to operative sorcerers, magicians, witches, etc. Terrifying tantric yogis who get shit done, and talking about that very thing, magic being real, actionable, and above all, practical. So, Jason Miller, you're the strategic sorcery guy. You have walked so many of us can run. Uh, Opine, my guy, on what this is all about.
Well, thank you for having me. And I've known Allison for years now, and known you online for a few years, and I love your work, both of you. And yeah, I have to say too, you inspire me with a lot of your posts, especially I'm not telling you how to live post. There was one you did. About poor breathing an idea,
Yeah.
right? And it's so spot on. Like Barden just hints at it, right? Like when
Mhm.
you're done with these elements, you pour breathe the sun or an idea or a nice painting and it ties right into samyama in the Yoga Sutras,
Mhm.
right? Like, so there's all this stuff in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And then you get to this chapter on samyama where it's basically just pick a thing, meditate on it until you become it, and then you get all of its powers. And then he goes on to list like all of the superpowers and occult things that basically become yours temporarily or permanently by identifying with rivers or the sun or a particular plant or another person
Mhm.
or so it's cool or a planet. So it's I see these things and I kind of geek out on them, and you know when I'm doom scrolling, it's always nice to have something else.
Oh no, sure. I mean, so a question about this that I intend to ask everyone who participates in this interview series. Why do you think that a person can read something like that, or read Barden, or read any host of medieval grimoire or folk magic manual, the Long Lost Friend, whatever, and turn their gaze away from the stuff that's right in front of them that they're told that they can do, that can actionably improve their lives?
It's so there's I was thinking about this recently, and I was thinking about um cargo cults.
Okay.
So this is sort of the term I think came about when shipments in the South Pacific would get lost, and these technological items would wind up, well, technological for the 40s,
Mhm.
would wind up on these islands that had very little outside contact. And so natives would encounter these technological items and they would use them. And I mean, there's a whole cult idea like if we pray, the gods will send more and that kind of thing. But there's also just sort of a use like we're gonna grab this and figure out what it does, even if we don't have the instruction manual, even if we don't have the context, right?
Mhm.
We're going to throw it into context. So, we can look at medieval grimoires and we can look at the Yoga Sutras and things that were written for a different time and a different place. But if you have this utilitarian eye, you see the stuff that's useful, right?
Mhm.
And it just, I don't know, it speaks to you. I think in the way that certain materials speak to artists, right? They pick something up and this new medium is just telling the artist, I want you to do this.
Sure.
And it's sort of like I look at that now, and I look at things through that functional authenticity lens, which is different than historical or cultural. Um, Whereas if you're primarily a historian, then whatever's older is better, or whatever is closest to what you did your dissertation in is de facto better, right? Like the closer this gets to second century AD, which is what then the better it is. Or culturally, like the closer this is to the heart of the culture, even if it's new, then the better it is. But if you're a sorcerer or a magician, then just the better it works, the better it is, and those can cross over. But you see it. It's the tech that works because it works. It's like Enochian, right? You'll hear people grab it. Nobody uses Enochian like John Dee did.
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
I mean, people get close. Like Skinner gets us closer, but in that interim, you had the Golden Dawn. They just ransacked that shit, and they started throwing it into like let's make an LBRP-ish thing out of this, and whoa, oh my god, look at the response, and eventually chess, which I've still not figured out the Enochian chess.
That was of an
Um,
era, certainly.
but but then it gets thrown off, and then you've got Anton LaVey grabs it, and he's like, "Yeah, let's just throw Satan in there." But people use it, and they get a decent result out of it, and the Schulers, right? Let's take this, let's write a book about it, and let's spin out wildly. Let's go into physics and yoga,
Right.
and it works. Does it work the same as John Dee thought it would? Fuck no, absolutely not. But I can tell you from experience that Enochian yoga is a workable thing. It's a workable meditation system. Um, so, I guess it's just some people just have that calling for magic and sorcery, and they see instantly the way something can be used rather than looking for permission to use it, or the first thing they want to do is use it. When I bought my daughter a guitar, before she learned chords, she was like, gimme. And like up in her room, notes on the fretboard, bum, 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 bum,
Mhm.
bum, bum, bum. Dad, I wrote a song, right? All single notes up and down the fretboard, but no scales, no chords, no lesson, not a damn thing other than here's the instrument. Before you tell me anything about it, I just want to play it. And then, of course, she learned chords and
Mhm.
scales and everything else. But I think that you just got to have that drive to use it, and stuff gets revealed. You know?
I mean, one certainly hopes anyway. The thing I think, and one of the things that inspired this whole thing is oftentimes Allison and I will talk as business partners do about the occult internet and the number of times that she has said, and I'm sure she's got stories where she'll be like, I was in this Facebook group and someone was like, "What's a magical result you've had?" And someone will be like, well, the real magic are the friends we made along the way. And the real,
Oh,
and these things, and it's funny because like I've seen Allison fix electronics with PGM magic in front of me. A thing that
yep.
a thing that vexes certain authors to the point where they'll write blog posts and books about it. But but like it's it's funny to me that half of our community, if it can be called a community, which, but half of it are people who go, magic is very real, and that's unfortunate because I would much rather be, making every excuse that I can to not do this. And as someone who educates in magic, teaches people how to do magic, and as someone else who's done this yourself, clearly, the number of people who come to me specifically, one on one especially, and I'll have to tell them like, you're not good at this. And they're like, but I've been the high priestess of such and such for this many years. And I'm like, and you learned nothing. Like you can't even hold a thought in your mind for 2 minutes. Like, did you not read the beginning part of every book about how you should probably do that? And they're like, well, I could, and I've had these results, and they'll be the most ephemeral, like this
Yeah.
probably wasn't even magic thing, which is why, and every one of my students will tell you, the first question I ask in every interview zero is, within the last calendar year, have you produced a result that could only have been magical? If so, what was it? And I don't mean, oh, well, this could have been, no, I mean like there was no other explanation, because that's, of course, what most of us strive towards. Stuff that is miracle level magic, crazy pants shit, the Olympic level of this. And but when people will try to talk you into thinking that, you know, the love in a baby's smile is the real magic. It's like,
Oh
sure,
yeah.
that's nice and all, but like that's not what we're talking about, and that's not what we're talking about. Everyone knows that. Why do you do that? And so to combat that, like if you could sit a person down and grab them by the shoulders and shake them and say anything to combat that, what might that be?
What so what I would do is I would ask them for an example of when their magic failed in their estimation. Because that's the thing, real things other than chemical reactions and like
Mhm.
real things don't always work out the way we want them to or think that they will,
Huh.
right? You invest it, so investors, economists, doctors, weathermen, everybody gets things wrong. Not every now and then. Everybody gets things wrong. And so the people who are sort of like delusional about magic, right? Like there's no standard of success. If you ask them when magic has ever not panned out, they won't have an answer because in their head, it always panned out in some way, shape, or form on the astral. Or, I learned something. The angel didn't want to give me that, but he gave me what I needed. Then why the fuck did you summon Zadkiel anyway? Right? Like,
Right.
it's not that Zadkiel didn't want you to do it. You didn't convey properly or you screwed up somewhere along the line, and that's okay. So, when it comes to the miracle results of magic, these happen. I am always like, I'm a guy that's like try to make a plan that would work without magic and then make sure that that plan works in spades. But, and then you have these sort of miraculous happenings along the way that are just sort of like, okay, that shit was crazy. Like I'm praying to Jupiter and it's a clear day and all of a sudden the sky opens up and there's like a cloud on top of Mount Killington just coming towards me with lightning that I can see like view to view, right? Like out of nowhere. And I was like, okay, 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 big guy, you're here. I get it. I do not want to be electrocuted for you to prove yourself. It's okay. But it is a shame because I see that all the time. Like the real wealth is the wealth inside. Well, no, the real wealth is the wealth that I mean, yes, that is a real wealth, but um we're talking about money, which is also a real wealth that you
Right.
need to pay things with. And I mean, I'm sure you've gotten clients where they're so hungry for results, they're inventing results before they even happen,
Yeah.
right? Like I remember I did a job spell for someone. I talked about this in a Q&A earlier today. And it was during the 2008 recession, so it was rough times, right? Like you're just and he was in a profession that was flooded. I mean, just absolutely 800 applicants for every job. And what I did, in my estimation, didn't work out. And he came back to me like 5 months later and was like, I guess that thing worked out. I finally got a job. And I was like, dude, no. Like, I mean, thank you, but no, like, let's be real. 5 months is too long for magic to wait. We should have, come back around and hit that shit after a month if it didn't pan out, even in this climate, right? And he was like, but I just wanted it before my unemployment ran out, and it was well before unemployment ran out. But I was like, yeah, I'm not going to take credit for that though. Like I'm going to be hard on myself, and I'm just going to say I'm not taking that as a win. That was uh so yeah, I would ask people, when does it not work out? Because if you don't know when it doesn't work out, then you don't know when it does work out. And you're just sort of interpreting everything. Same thing with spirit contact. The spirit told me to do this and told me to do that. I've even had someone plagiarize my class, and when I caught them and had a friend who's a online forensics guy track them down, they were like, Hecate told me to do it. And I was like, yeah, no. Like, no, no, no. You wanted to do it, and then, you either are telling me that and lying, or you're lying to yourself. Um, so yeah, these sort of like I wake up and I chat with the God every day, and they tell me exactly what I want to hear and that I'm a good person, and um that's not real, right? It might be comforting, and that's fine, but it's not the kind of world-shaking mystical encounter or magical encounter that we're talking about. So yeah, that's what I would say. It'd just be like, get real.
No, 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 that is solid. I mean, having a generally reasonable approach to these things, like anything else, is good. I mean, I admittedly am someone who will always push one for workshopping one's failures in terms of magic, but also for pushing it harder. Like I'm the way I look at it is, do you or do you not want, and this is the thing my students will tell you, I ask them ad nauseum, do you or do you not want great things? Do you or do you not want things you are not supposed to have? Because I will sit people down and go, without this, you could not achieve this. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, making a plan that would work is awesome. You should. Don't be stupid. But asking magic for the next level, the thing you now crucially, you got to keep what you call, if you can't maintain it at all, then obviously, even if you get it, it may fall apart. But I'm always the one who will entreat people to have more than what they otherwise could have. Like I'm a crack the sky kind of dude. Always have been, always will be.
I hear you. And I think the thing is, the more you get, the more you realize what's possible.
Sure.
I mean, when I remember coming back from Nepal in 2000, and I was a temp before I went over. I had no real skills. Like I had bounced between temp jobs in Philadelphia and working at my family's hardware store, right? Like no real professional experience, very little experience with computers. But I kind of became fascinated with voice over IP telephone. I'm like, making phone calls through the internet. That's so cool. I can do this from Nepal and it comes out clearer than the phone line. That's pretty awesome. And so I did a lot of magic to get a job that I was in no way qualified for. Like even a little bit. Um, didn't lie, just worked the magic, worked it on the application, worked it on the networking, worked it on the interview, got in, and then, like you said, you have to hold it. So then it becomes okay, time to summon those tutelary spirits of Mercury because
Yeah.
now my learning curve, like I have to stay here, right? Like it's one thing to get your foot in the door with bullshit, but um don't replace competence with confidence.
I mean that much is certainly true. It's interesting because as someone who is very boots on the ground in terms of not only my age, as I'm not even 40 yet, but the fact that I will hang my hat on the fact that I live in the world. I know
Yep.
how the world works. I pressure test my beliefs about how the world is constantly, and that helps me be better for my clients and my students and everything. And I would argue, and I actually want your take on this, and I would also like Allison's take on this, since I tend to steamroll the conversation, and I apologize for that every day. But where do you think the line is between world that is, like uncomfortable truths as they are, and magic's ability to surpass and change them, or change your ability to engage with them? Of course, broad topic, but
Yeah. Allison hasn't said a word, so I'm going to yield to Allison first and let her speak and then give myself time to think.
Well, Alex, it reminds me of something that you said. Now, I've said this on other interviews where after I got laid off from my corporate job and I was job hunting, and this is immediately prior to me founding Practical Occult. Um, I was having a difficult time of it because the landscape of the world had changed with the way that we apply for jobs and um, like knowing keywords and computers interpreting things. And before, I had never had a problem with that because, I'm old enough that I would have in-person interviews in the past, and I would, you know, look people like straight in the eye and with like my inner voice be like, hire me. You want to hire me? You want to give me more money than,
right.
you're offering, et cetera, et cetera. But that had to do with me in an interview. So because the whole landscape of getting a job had changed, the magic that I was used to doing was not applicable. So I think that there's definitely a conversation there about changing your tactics based on the landscape that you're working in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I've run into that myself where sort of old school like root work people are like, yeah, I'm not walking down the street handing in resumes. So there's and of course now we all three of us do a lot of work online. And I do a good bit of cyber magic. But it's interesting because it doesn't look like what the cyber magicians kind of talk about, right? Like they talk about the internet like it's an astral plane and like it's a more spiritual place and they go here and they go there and I'm just like, nope, you're at your desk. Like you're when you go to Amazon or you go to strategicsorcery.net or you go to Practical Occult, you aren't going anywhere. You're sitting at your desk and you're any more than you're going somewhere when you're dialing a phone number. Um, so but I started applying a lot of the principles of sympathetic magic simply two things online. Which is why I often I don't schedule lessons to be sent out usually, which sometimes if I forget on something, then people are like, dude, lesson, come on, but I want to be there to utter a prayer and an offering as the lesson goes out, to connect with the people it's going out with in that moment. Or I'll do something where I'll be at my desk and I will utter a spell or light some incense, and then I will move money around to create a vacuum in PayPal, right? Or I'll even buy something that I shouldn't have, going to Alex's, like, doing things you shouldn't have. I think I'm old enough now that I can't recall what I wrote in my own damn books, but I think in Elements of Spellcrafting, I wrote a chapter on, like, blaspheme against against what you're supposed to have, like blaspheme against it. Just, yeah, instead of a 20% income bump, I want to 10x and, like, enter some place that I should not be able to be in, right? Enter those circles that I shouldn't be allowed in. So, I'll order something that's ludicrously expensive as an act of, like, and that's relative, by the way, to everyone. I'm not talking yachts. Like, so if anybody's thinking, like, oh my God, Jason, like, emptied his retirement account, but we're not talking about that. Just the kind of thing that you would have to think multiple times before buying, but you do it with this statement of, like, I have this absolute confidence that I am moving into this next level, right? And as a statement of that wealth, I'm doing this, right? Or an offering, making an offering online to a different charity. There's so much Catholic magic out there. One of the fun things to do is to donate to a Catholic charity, and they will then send you an endless supply of crucifixes, rosaries, saint medals, and you name it. And then you can use all those in magic.
That's
so
true.
You can take all the things they send you for free and just start, like, using them in folk magic, as sort of your, like, but yeah, just little acts like that, multiplying, uh, even copy and paste, right? Like, writing something out, copying it and pasting it a multitude of times, sending it out there with a petition. These are kinds of weird cyber things. They don't involve a cyberverse or anything, but they're using digital tools in the way that we might use physical items in sympathetic magic, because it's the action that's sympathetic. It's not the lemon and the knife that are magic. It's the act of stabbing that's magic, right? So why not the act of deleting and the act of multiplying? And when we enter into spirit, but we still have a computer in front of us, these are all possibilities. So I don't know if that really answers Alex's question on my end, though, as to, what is real and what's not. What can you restate the question?
Well, first of all, what you said was cool as hell and actually does help with the whole, like, how can people better do magic? That's a very cogent answer about, like, what you can do right now. And before I restate my question, I will say, to that end, I also always entreat people, and I don't know why people lost the plot on this, but, like, internal power development, energy work things, astral stuff. I don't know why people stopped doing that as though it wasn't extremely effective in a force multiplier, because in a world where we are physically distant from each other, a magic system in which distance doesn't exist functionally is your best friend. And to that end, it's one of those things like I tell people all the time, learn to astral project. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it sucks. Yes, it feels like you're daydreaming 80% of the time. Even the best of us are not truly out there with no bodily sensation dancing around the ethers, except a couple, which is great. We love those experiences. But
Right.
sometimes the thing I posted something on Instagram actually that's cogent to this, where I said like anyone who pretends like you're not sometimes feeling like you're having the most vivid daydream of your life that ends up coming true in this is lying. Because
Oh
and
yeah.
again, like I grew up with this. I come from like my old man is a magician. Like I had never had the burden of proof. I never doubted. I never had that problem. And still, I'm like literally sitting there watching Netflix, doing a Barden Volt in like this corner of my field of vision and send it out. And I'm like, I wonder if that works. And then all of a sudden, like, the 4 class sales I wanted to vote for end up happening while I'm watching Netflix. And I'm like, oh fuck, good for me. Like you too can do these things. But
Yep.
the question in general was, where do you think the line between world that is, like inconvenient truth of world that is, versus how magic can circumvent that? Like where is that
Oof.
razor's edge in your approximation?
I wish that I knew, because I have had my expectations or my limitations blown out of the water multiple times, right? So, when you're super young, and I started at 15, you have these kind of crazy ideas of what's possible. And so you go into things with this, like, yeah, this is absolutely possible. This is going to work. And then crazy stuff happens. And then you meet some people that are older, they're in their 30s, and they've been doing it a while, and they're like, yeah, it's mostly we're manipulating coincidences, and they're like kind of how you described the people online. They're like, they're taking any little glimmer of hope as if it's the miracle of miracles that their magic manifested. And I'm like, no, no, because I'm lucky that I started young enough that you didn't like beat the magic out of me with Llewellyn books. And it's not that I don't owe a lot to Llewellyn books. I worked Don Craig's Modern Magic like, you know, it was the gospel for a while. So I absolutely do. But then I would get into these things and I'd be like, yeah, there's some amazing stuff. Like the amount of coincidences, the crazy things, the synchronicities are just through the roof. And then every now and then, and of course, the visionary things, right? Even the ones that like smack you, or then paranormal things. Yes, okay, then there's real paranormal things that can happen that maybe you can't reproduce right away. But yes, every light bulb in the house did just pop all at once. And then I met Kunzang Dorje Rinpoche, and he did something that should be physically impossible. I mean, and just, you know, this is good. But then look, and there's a bird frozen in the air. Now, what does it take to do that? Well, Kunzang Dorje was, uh, bless him, a little disconnected from the reality that the rest of us live in. He was, he spent a good part of his time inebriated, and even when sober, he was absolutely, his wife once, when he asked me to get him a bottle of Dewar's, and his wife Jomo asked me not to, um, she said, he just sees his central channels. He doesn't see his liver. he sees, he just sees his chakras and nadis. He doesn't know what it's doing to, like, he's not seeing the physical. Um, And it goes back to, there's that line in Jonathan Strange and Dr. Norrell that stuck with me, that the spirits or the elves or no, I think the fairies. The fairies have very high magic and low rationality, and humans have very high rationality and low magic. So maybe there's a relationship that he crossed into. I don't ever want to lose that amount of rationality that I have. I enjoy being rational with magic. I encourage people to be more rational with magic. But the potential of it is tremendous. I don't know that there is a cap. I hope that in 200 years we're studying, just as we're talking about things that yogis and used to do, and I mean, geometry used to be the providence of wizards, So just as we're now talking in scientific fields about these things and how to enhance them, I hope that we're discussing these things in a way that make you and I seem absolutely antiquated. Like, oh, well, those people in the early 21st century, they were a little behind the times, but, we stand on their shoulders. So, it's all good. But, as for why people lost the energy body stuff, it's we operate in thought cults, unfortunately, and there's very few people that will jump out of the thought cult, right? So in the 90s and the 80s, well, really for most of the latter half of the 20th century, you had nobody was paying attention to the grimoires other than the sigils, but like nobody would ever think to do the summoning of in the Ars Goetia or the Grimoire Verum as it's written. They would just take those seals and do it in a Golden Dawn format or a Thelemic format. No one would ever. I mean, I remember getting laughed at in occult circles when I would use confusion powder or something from Botanica. They thought it was hilarious and silly. And so then around 2000, around the turn of the century, old magic kind of became the new magic. We had the grimoire revival and all these magnificent new translations and people saying, hey, maybe we should actually look at these books and what they say and not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe it wouldn't kill us to go to mass and get the chalk on January 6th. Maybe there is something to that. But unfortunately, those books in the West don't cover energy work and chakras, at least not in that language. And so it all gets thrown out. Right, you have the model wars in the early 2000s. I don't know if you remember those when everybody.
I do remember those.
All the blogs, magic's next top model. It's energy. No, it's spirit. No, it's mind. And I'm just sitting there going, guys, it's all. It's not one or the other. And for fuck's sake, it's not meta where you paradigm shift between. It's just all parts of a whole. Like, get a grip. And everywhere else in the world, this is not a debate. If you go to Mexico or Central America and you talk with shaman, they're summoning spirits. They're also traveling in spirit, aka astral projection. They are using their body in certain ways and looking at things certain ways. They'll talk about projecting energy. And it's only kind of in the Western occult scene where you have this like, well, I'm a grimoire person, so all that energy stuff is just garbage. well, I'm an energy person. All that spirit stuff is just garbage. And, I'm a psychology person, and both of you are garbage. Like that doesn't exist anywhere else. Um, Everywhere else, it's all just parts of the whole,
No, you're
as
certainly
you
right.
know.
Yeah, you're certainly right about that. However, Allison, do you have a perspective on the question at hand?
I think that I believe that anything is possible with magic, uh, magic itself, and that our imperfect knowledge of how to apply it and our limitations as embodied people are part of what needs to be transcended to get those results. So I don't believe that there is a cap to magic at all. Um, I just think that there's a cap to me.
No, that is, in typical Allison fashion, both correct and remarkably humble. You say it's a cap to you. I have never seen more people actually weep in the presence of an individual because it's like, oh, this woman cured this disease in me years ago. I have seen this more than once. So again, like the humility, it's just as someone who knows you, it's fascinating. Also, when it comes to yachts, the Practical Occult Jupiter yacht will be out this year. If any investors want to buy that, aka Big Jupes, be a good time. But aside from the obvious future we're all manifesting of the Practical Occult Yacht Party, which should happen. So to that end, I guess to wrap up what we hope to be shorter interviews, which given how much I talk, is probably never actually going to happen. But we try, we do our best. So aside from all the stuff you've already suggested, is there anything you've brought with you today to share with the class in terms of like a practical occult strategy for an individual person? Aside from buy Jason Miller's stuff or buy the Strategic Sorcery course, and that will answer it.
Let me show you my book. No, so I didn't bring anything physically, but everyone should know Alex told me about this question earlier in the day, and I was like, let me think about that. And then things happen, and I gave very little thought of it to it. But I was at a Walgreens earlier, a drugstore,
Mm.
and I am a big fan, especially in these times where some people are experiencing financial hardship that is tremendous, where every little penny counts. Um, not having to get everything at an occult store uh, is it really is okay to use things from the kitchen or from the grocery store or from a CVS. So one of the things that I've always loved working with is Epsom salts, right? Epsom salts and rubbing alcohol and a nice cauldron or a nice, something that's not going to melt. And this is sort of like a really traditional purification, which is just to put your name into a bowl, cover it with Epsom salt, cover it with a little bit of rubbing alcohol. People, if you like, experiment with this first. Like, go outside someplace, or someplace where nothing is going to burn, because the flames can get like 2 feet high. Don't like do this in your temple with tapestries hanging on the walls and things like that, right? Like, fire safety first. But yeah, and then some people will actually take like a blessed candle and then they'll light it at the end of like a candle magic to purify. And that creates this flame, and the Epsom salt creates this blue flame that is just extremely purifying, right? So it can get rid of cross conditions, it can purify you. But here's the thing: Epsom salt also takes on the properties of most anything that you combine it with. So let's take your name out and put the name of your enemy in, and mix the Epsom salt in with graveyard dirt from the grave of, some convicted serial murderer. Now you can layer on that, and you light it with a black candle, and Now that Epsom salt fire is still purifying you from their presence, right? Like it's sort of a double, like burn this person out of my life, and and take every harmful thing they brought with them back and light it on fire. Like cover them with it and light it on fire. Um, but it doesn't have to be a curse either. I mean, you could. I've never done one as a financial blessing, but it could very easily be done combined with, um, you know, allspice or your favorite money herbs in there. So Epsom salt, like most salts, will they are themselves sort of purifying, but just like with witch salt, when you make it black, it can be used in cursing. Epsom salt can too take on the qualities of other things around it. And it's cheap. You can do it in a pot. So it's a nice effect too. If you want to if you really want to get your hands dirty and feel like a proper sorcerer over a flame, summon the spirits, light it on fire, and have a go at it. Um, it'll get stuff moving for you.
Well, we love to see it. That's exactly what we want here because
I'm sorry, I should have had a whole thing and done it
no, no,
outside.
no, no, you don't actually have to like no. I mean, it'd be cool if you demonstrated it, but no. But the goal here, and like this is why I love this kind of shit, is the goal after we have many episodes of this thing is I would like an intrepid young person who's like, what works? To be able to go through the playlist of this shit on the YouTube channel and be like, I'm just going to do all of these. And then after a month, their life is immediately better and great by comparison. Because sometimes simple stuff will move things in huge ways. It's about, in my personal opinion, getting active and doing magic. There was a post that you, Jason, made years ago. It was the always be conjuring thing based on
Yep.
that always be selling thing. And as someone who read it, you did say like there are two kind of people. Either you're gonna hear that rant and like be like, I'm inspired to sell some shit, or you're gonna be hurt by it. I was the one who was inspired to conjure some shit because it's magic is a doing thing, right? Like you want to be good at it, do it all the time, and then you will be good at it like anything else. But yeah, no, that again, thank you for being on. Thank you for rocking up with this. If there are any closing remarks you have about operative sorcery and the people that do it or should do it, hit us with some wisdom.
Everybody should try it. And sometimes you might not be good at one aspect of it and better at another aspect of it. I suck at gambling magic. Often because I don't like gambling. I'm distinctly uncomfortable with just like throwing money into a gambling thing. But some people love it. But I think if I want to leave people with one tip, it's every day walk into a room and just imagine how you would do magic using just the things in that room. Invent a spell on the spot using the things in that room. You make a decision. This represents that, and I'm going to do this with that, and it's going to tell the universe this is what I want done. And really, all magic is an extrapolation on that.
You know what? Fair. I dig that. Well, all right then. Again, Jason, thank you for being on. Always, definitely a pleasure to have you here. If anybody wants to know anything about Jason, you got Strategic Sorcery, you got the Hecate course, you got the Cyprian course. I've admittedly taken pretty much all of your courses except for the Jupiter one and the Wisdom of Hecate one. That said, my opinion, the Level Up course, best thing you ever did. Like genuinely, people sleep on that shit. I wrote a review on it on the website, so I mean, like I'm a fan.
I know. Thank you very much.